Carter Weston kicked the crutch out from under Sophie Cole's left arm so fast she didn't even see it coming. She hit the cafeteria floor hard, her tray exploding across the tile, food spraying across 3 tables. The room went dead silent. Sophie lay there on her hands and one knee, her leg brace twisted sideways, her chin trembling. Carter looked down at her, the way a person looks at something they stepped on by accident. "Oops," he said. "Didn't see you there, soldier girl." Then he smiled. "Your daddy's not even in the country. Who's going to help you now?" Nobody moved. Nobody helped her up. Before we go any further, please subscribe to our channel and follow Sophie's story all the way to the end. Drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. We want to see how far this story travels. Sophie had stopped counting the days after week 6. In the beginning, she kept a mental list. Day 1, Carter knocked her lunch tray into her lap in front of the entire 5th grade. Day 3, someone filled her backpack with wet paper towels so her textbooks were soaked before first period. Day 8, she found a note taped to the inside of her locker that said, "Your dad picked the wrong job." Day 11, Carter started calling her Gimp in the hallway. Not loud enough for teachers to catch, just loud enough for everyone around him to laugh. By week 6, she stopped counting because counting made it real. And making it real meant she might say something to someone. And saying something to someone had already proven useless twice. She had told her Aunt Diane on a Tuesday night, quietly, at the kitchen table after dinner. Diane had gone straight to the school the next morning. Principal Ford had listened with her hands folded, her expression professionally concerned, and then explained that she would be speaking with all students involved. 14 days later, Carter Weston had poured chocolate milk down Sophie's back while she was carrying her science project to class. Nothing happened to him. Nothing ever happened to him. The second time, Sophie told Ms. Reyes, her 4th grade teacher from the previous year, the one adult in the building who had ever actually looked at her like she was a person. Ms. Reyes filed a written incident report the same afternoon. Then she filed another one 3 days later. Then a third. Sophie knew this because Ms. Reyes told her she was documenting everything, that it mattered, that someone would eventually have to respond. But nobody responded, and Ms. Reyes started getting pulled into the principal's office every other week for conversations Sophie was never told about. So Sophie stopped telling people. She started eating lunch in the library bathroom. She started taking the long way between every class, the route that added 4 minutes to every transition, but kept her away from Carter's locker cluster. She stopped putting up the drawings on her bedroom wall that she used to love, the fighter jets and ocean sketches and the pencil portrait of Ranger she'd been working on for 2 months. She took them down because looking at them reminded her of who she used to be before Millbrook Academy started teaching her who she was allowed to be. Her father's messages came every few days from overseas. "How's school, Soph? Making friends? Eating enough?" And Sophie would type back, "School's great, Dad. Yeah, I'm good." And then she'd sit there on the edge of her bed and stare at the screen for a while before she hit send. She didn't want to worry him. He was 6,000 miles away, doing something dangerous and classified and necessary. And she was 10 years old, with a bad leg, in a school full of marble floors and rich kids whose fathers donated sports complexes. She didn't think those two problems belonged in the same conversation. She had no idea her father was already on a plane home. Marcus Cole had been pulled off his deployment on a Wednesday with 48 hours' notice and a reassignment that gave him no details and no explanation. He and Ranger had boarded a transport at 0400. Ranger sitting calm and square in his crate in the cargo hold, like a dog who had done this enough times to treat it as routine. Marcus had slept for 3 hours and spent the other 9 staring at the ceiling of the aircraft, thinking about nothing useful. He landed at Naval Air Station Oceana on a Thursday morning, cleared his gear, signed his paperwork, got into his truck with Ranger riding in the back seat, and drove toward Millbrook because surprising Sophie at school felt like the first uncomplicated thing he'd done in 9 months. He stopped at the gas station 11 minutes from the school to get coffee. He turned his phone back on for the first time in 4 days. He sat in the parking lot and read 6 weeks of messages from Sophie, one after another, the whole thread, start to finish. And somewhere around week 4, he stopped drinking his coffee. Not because anything in the messages was alarming. The opposite. They were too cheerful. Perfectly cheerful. Specifically, selectively, deliberately cheerful. In a way that left out every detail a 10-year-old would normally include. No mention of friends. No complaints about teachers or homework. No stories about lunch. No jokes. No questions about when he was coming home. Just short, clean, careful messages that told him she was fine and asked nothing. His daughter had stopped asking him things. Marcus sat with that for 60 seconds. He knew Sophie Cole the way a man knows the most important person he has ever been responsible for. Sophie complained about everything in the best possible way. She texted him 17 times about a substitute teacher who pronounced her name wrong for an entire week. She once sent him a 4-paragraph message about a kid on the school bus who chewed too loud. Sophie asked questions constantly, about everything, about nothing, about things that didn't need questions. She had not asked him a single question in 6 weeks. He put the truck in drive and went faster. He pulled into the Millbrook Academy parking lot at 8:47 in the morning and sat there with the engine running. The drop-off line was still clearing. Parents in expensive cars, kids in uniforms, the particular organized rush of a school that ran on money and schedule. Then he saw her. Sophie was walking toward the front entrance from the sidewalk, her leg brace showing below her uniform skirt, her backpack over one shoulder, her head slightly down. She was maybe 40 feet from the front doors when Carter Weston and 2 other boys stepped out of nowhere and spread themselves across her path. Marcus watched through the windshield. He couldn't hear anything. He didn't need to. He had spent 9 years learning to read threat posture from a distance, and Carter Weston's shoulders were doing exactly what shoulders do when a person has done this many times before and has never once been stopped. Sophie pulled her backpack strap tighter. She tried to go around. Carter stepped sideways. One of the other boys laughed. Ranger made a sound in the back seat. Not a bark, just a low exhale. The sound he made when he sensed Marcus's body change, before Marcus was even consciously aware it had changed. Marcus's hand rested on the door handle. He did not get out yet. He watched. He waited. He was a SEAL. He had been trained his entire adult life to observe before acting, to understand the full shape of a situation before he committed to a response. He pressed that training against every instinct he had and forced himself to keep watching. Sophie said something. Carter said something back. The other boys moved slightly. Not aggressive, just present. The way a crowd positions itself around something it has done before and expects to do again without consequence. Sophie's chin came up. Whatever Carter said, she had answered it. Her voice didn't carry through the windshield, but her posture did. She was holding her ground. Then Carter laughed, and the boys parted, and Sophie walked through them and into the school. She walked like someone who had learned to walk through things. Marcus sat in the parking lot for 2 full minutes after the entrance cleared. He was running the timeline in his head. 6 weeks, 42 days. She had been dealing with whatever this was for 42 days, and her messages home had been cheerful and careful, and entirely empty of the girl he knew. He called Diane. She picked up on the first ring, and when he said, "Diane, I need you to tell me what's been happening at that school," she made a sound that was not quite a word, more like something breaking loose. "Marcus," she said, "I have been waiting for this call for 5 weeks." She talked for 11 minutes without stopping. The crutch incident, the soaked backpack, the note in the locker, the 2 school visits that produced nothing, Ms. Reyes's reports that disappeared into administration, the bruise on Sophie's forearm that Sophie said came from a door, but that the angle was completely wrong for a door. Carter Weston's father, Grant Weston, who had donated the new athletic complex 18 months ago, and whose name appeared in the school newsletter 4 times a year. The particular way Principal Ford's voice changed whenever the Weston family was mentioned, going from practiced concern to something softer, more careful, more afraid. "She stopped talking to me about it 3 weeks ago," Diane said. "She just started saying she was fine. I didn't know how to push harder without making it worse. I didn't know what to do." "You did the right thing going to the school," Marcus said. His voice was level, the way it got level when he was past the emotion and into the decision. "Marcus, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to go talk to Principal Ford," he said. He said it calmly, the way he said most things when the calm was doing a tremendous amount of work. He got out of the truck. He opened the back door and clipped Ranger's lead. Ranger dropped out of the seat and sat beside him on the asphalt, looking up with those amber eyes that never seemed to miss anything. "Come on," Marcus said. They walked toward the school together, a man in NWU Type 3 digital camouflage, with short dark brown hair and 9 months of controlled anger behind his eyes, and a German shepherd with a tan and black coat, who moved like he understood that what was about to happen mattered. The receptionist at the front desk looked up when they came through the door. She looked at Marcus. She looked at Ranger. She picked up her phone without being asked. "Principal Ford," she said, her voice slightly higher than it had been a moment ago. "There's a Navy SEAL here to see you." She paused, listening. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "He has a dog." Marcus waited at the desk, his hands at his sides, his face patient and still. Ranger sat beside him perfectly square, watching the hallway in both directions, his ears forward, his amber eyes calm and absolute. Down that hallway, behind one of those identical classroom doors, Sophie Cole was sitting at a desk, doing her best impression of a girl who was fine. Her father had come home, and he was just beginning to understand everything she had refused to tell him. Principal Ford came out of her office, with her hand already extended and her professional smile already assembled. The kind of smile that had been practiced so many times it arrived before the emotion it was supposed to represent. "Commander Cole," she said, "what a wonderful surprise. We didn't know you were back stateside." "I landed this morning," Marcus said. He did not take her hand immediately. He let the pause sit for exactly 1 second longer than was comfortable. Then he shook it. "I was hoping we could talk." Of course. Please, come in." She glanced at Ranger. "Is the dog necessary?" "Yes," Marcus said. They sat across from each other in her office, Ranger settling onto the floor beside Marcus's chair without being told. Ford folded her hands on her desk and produced the expression she reserved for difficult parents, sympathetic and immovable at the same time. "We are so grateful for your service," she began. "I appreciate that," Marcus said. "I'd like to see Sophie's incident file." A beat. Small, but real. "I'm sorry?" "The documentation of complaints filed on Sophie's behalf during the fall semester. Incident reports, administrative responses, outcomes. I'd like to see the file." Ford's smile held, but something behind it shifted. Commander Cole, student records are, my daughter is a minor. I'm her legal guardian, and I have full parental access to her school records under federal law. I'm not asking for anything unusual. Marcus kept his voice even. I just want to see the file. Ford opened her computer. She typed for longer than necessary. She turned the screen slightly, not enough for Marcus to read easily, and summarized from it instead of showing him directly. We have a few notations from fall semester, some social adjustment concerns, a couple of minor peer conflicts that were addressed at the classroom level. How many incident reports did Ms. Reyes file? Silence. Excuse me, Ford said. Elena Reyes, 4th grade teacher. She filed written incident reports about my daughter's treatment by other students. I want to know how many she filed and what the outcome of each one was. Ford's hands separated on the desk. She picked up a pen she didn't need. Ms. Reyes is a caring teacher who sometimes documents situations before the full context is understood. How many reports? The number Ford gave him was 2. Marcus already knew from Diane that the number was 7. He let that gap sit between them without commenting on it, and he watched Ford's face as she realized he already knew. I'd like the complete file, he said. Printed, before I leave today. Ford said she would have her assistant pull it together. Marcus stood. One more thing. The security camera footage from the cafeteria, Tuesday of last week. I'd like a copy. Our cameras in that section have been experiencing some technical, when were they last serviced? Ford did not answer immediately. I'll follow up with your facilities coordinator directly, Marcus said. He picked up Ranger's lead. Thank you for your time, Principal Ford. I'll wait for that file at the front desk. He walked out of her office and down the hallway, and he did not let any of it show on his face until he was outside, standing in the cold air with Ranger beside him. And then he stood there for 30 seconds, doing the breathing exercise his first SEAL instructor had taught him at 22 years old, for exactly this kind of moment. The kind where rage was completely justified and completely useless at the same time. He pulled out his phone and called Nora Vance. She picked up on the second ring. Marcus Cole, she said, like she'd been expecting him to call eventually. You're back. Landed 4 hours ago. Nora, I need to ask you something. Go ahead. Grant Weston, the developer. You know that name? The pause that followed was not a confused pause. It was the pause of someone deciding how much to say on an open line. Why are you asking me about Grant Weston? His son has been systematically targeting my daughter for 11 weeks. The school has buried every complaint. The principal can't say his name without her voice changing register. Marcus kept walking, kept his voice low. I need to know if this is isolated or if it's a pattern. Another pause. Longer. How fast can you get to my office? He was there in 20 minutes. Nora Vance worked financial crimes out of a building that smelled like old coffee and paper, which Marcus found immediately reassuring after 9 months of environments that smelled like things he preferred not to identify. She was sitting on the edge of her desk when he came in, a thick manila folder open in her lap, and she looked at him with the particular expression of someone who has been waiting a long time to have a specific conversation. Sit down, she said. She showed him the first page. 6 names, 6 children, 4 years. Grant Weston has been running a development operation in this county for the better part of a decade, Nora said. Zoning variances, city contract bids, public land acquisitions, enormous money. And every time someone with standing got in his way, a city council vote, a competing contractor, a business owner who organized opposition. Within 3 to 4 months, their kids started having serious problems at school. Marcus looked at the second page. A chart. Children's names on one side, their parents' names and professional roles on the other. He scanned it twice. Carter Weston targets them directly, Nora continued. Organized, sustained, designed to break the child psychologically. And when the parents try to escalate through official channels, she tapped the page. The school administration is already insulated. Donations create access. Access creates loyalty. And suddenly, every complaint gets filed in a drawer that never gets opened. Sophie is on this list, Marcus said. I added her last week. She's the 6th. Nora's voice was steady, but her jaw tightened. I've been building this case for 9 months, Marcus. I have financial records tying Weston to 3 of the 4 school board members who approved Ford's contract renewal. I have a paper trail showing his foundation donations spiked by 40% in the 3 months after each family on that list tried to fight back through official channels. She looked at him directly. What I don't have is a witness with standing and credibility who can go on record. You have 6 families. I have 6 families who are exhausted and scared, and have already been publicly discredited by Weston's PR operation. 3 of them pulled their children from school. 2 of them moved. Nora closed the folder. I need someone who isn't afraid of Grant Weston. Marcus looked at the folder. Then he looked at Nora. What do you need from me? I need you to not do anything alone, she said immediately. Whatever you're feeling right now, and I can see exactly what you're feeling, I need you to work this through proper channels with me. Not because I don't trust you, because if you go at Weston directly before the legal groundwork is in place, his lawyers will bury it and he'll walk. I understand that. Do you, Nora? His voice was quiet. I spent 9 years building cases in the field before I touched a single target. I know how to be patient. She studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. Okay, here's what I need from you. I need you to pull Sophie's complete school file through official parental access. Every suppressed report, every administrative response. It adds to the pattern documentation. She opened a new page in the folder. And I need you to get Ranger into that school. Marcus looked at her. Officially registered service animal, Nora said. Schools cannot deny access. You put that dog in those hallways every morning when you drop Sophie off, and you do it in uniform, and you let Grant Weston see that the situation has changed. That's not going to be enough to stop Carter. No, Nora agreed, but it's going to force Weston to react. And when people like him react under pressure, they make mistakes. She tapped the folder. That's what I've been waiting for. His first real mistake. Marcus drove back to Diane's house in the late afternoon, the school file on the passenger seat. He had read it twice at Nora's office, sitting at her conference table with Ranger at his feet, going through 7 incident reports that had been officially logged by Ms. Reyes, and then manually marked as resolved, without any documented action. Resolved. As if Sophie's bruised forearm and soaked textbooks and 11 weeks of organized cruelty were problems that resolved themselves. He pulled into the driveway and sat in the truck for a moment. Through the front window, he could see the kitchen light on. Diane moving around the stove. Sophie at the table, her head bent over homework, her leg brace propped against the chair leg beside her. She was wearing his old navy sweatshirt, the one she'd claimed 2 years ago and refused to give back. She was too thin. He hadn't noticed in his relief at seeing her earlier. She was too thin, and her shoulders had a set to them that they hadn't had 9 months ago. The particular posture of a person who had learned to take up less space. Ranger pressed his nose against the window, watching Sophie through the glass. I know, Marcus said quietly. He picked up his phone. He had one more call to make before he went inside. Ms. Elena Reyes had included her personal cell number on the bottom of every one of her 7 incident reports, a detail that had not escaped him. It was the kind of thing someone does when they want a parent to be able to reach them outside official channels, when they want to be found by someone who will actually listen. She picked up on the 3rd ring, and when Marcus identified himself, The words came out of her fast and urgent, like they had been waiting for exactly this call, since the first report she filed went nowhere. Mr. Cole, I have been documenting everything, every single incident. I made copies before they could be removed from the system. I have photographs. I have dates. I have statements from 2 other students who witnessed the cafeteria incident last Tuesday. Her voice dropped. And there is something else. Something I couldn't put in an official report because I have no proof yet. But I need you to know. Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. Tell me. Carter Weston is not doing this on his own initiative, she said. He's 11 years old. 11-year-olds can be cruel, but they are not organized like this. The targeting is too specific. The timing is too deliberate. And twice I have seen Carter on his phone immediately before an incident, like he's receiving instructions. A pause. Someone is directing him, and I think you already know who. Marcus stared through the windshield at Sophie's silhouette in the kitchen window. I'll be at the school tomorrow morning, he said. 8 o'clock. Bring everything you have. He hung up. He looked at his daughter through the glass for one more moment. Then he picked up Ranger's lead, opened the truck door, and walked toward the house. Toward her. He had been 6,000 miles away for 9 months, and she had carried all of this alone because she didn't want to worry him. He was never going to let that happen again. Ms. Reyes was already waiting in the parking lot when Marcus arrived at 7:52 the next morning. She had a canvas tote bag over one shoulder that was thick with papers, and she was watching the entrance with the particular alertness of someone who had been doing that every morning for weeks and hadn't stopped being scared by it. She saw Marcus come in, and something in her shoulders dropped an inch, the way tension releases when the person you've been waiting for finally shows up. "You brought Ranger," she said. "He goes where I go," Marcus said. "You have the copies?" She handed him the bag without preamble. Everything. Dates, photographs, witness names. 2 students who saw the cafeteria incident from start to finish. I've been keeping duplicates at home since the 3rd report disappeared. Her voice was controlled, but her hands weren't entirely steady. Principal Ford called me into her office twice last month. She didn't say anything directly. She talked about documentation procedures and professional boundaries, and how important it was for teachers to work within established systems. She looked at him. But I understood what she was telling me. She was telling you to stop. She was telling me what happened to teachers who didn't. Marcus looked at the bag in his hands. 7 reports. 11 weeks. A teacher who had kept filing paperwork, knowing it would go nowhere, because she needed it to exist somewhere, in some form, so that when the right person finally came looking, there would be something to find. "Thank you," he said, "for not giving up on her." Ms. Reyes pressed her lips together and nodded once, quick, like she didn't trust herself to say anything back. They walked into the school together. Carter Weston arrived at 8:09. Marcus was standing in the main hallway with Ranger when Carter came through the front doors with 2 of his usual group. Carter saw Marcus first. Then he saw Ranger. His stride broke, just slightly, a half-step interruption that told Marcus everything about what Carter had been expecting this morning, which was the same hallway with the same absence of consequences he had been walking into for 11 weeks. Carter recovered fast. Marcus gave him credit for that. He reset his expression and kept walking, and by the time he passed them in the hallway, he was wearing the particular blank confidence of a boy who had learned very young that nothing stuck to him. But he had broken stride. Marcus had seen it, and Marcus filed it away. Sophie arrived with Diane at 8:15. When she came through the door and saw Marcus standing there in his uniform, with Ranger on his left and Ms. Reyes on his right, she stopped completely. Her face did something complicated, cycling through surprise and relief, and something that was almost close to tears before she locked it down. "Dad," she said, "you didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said simply. Ranger walked directly to her without being released, pressing his nose into her hand. Sophie grabbed his collar and held on for a second longer than she probably meant to. Marcus let her have it. "He's staying with you today," Marcus said. "The paperwork is done. Any teacher, administrator, or student who has a problem with that can come talk to me directly." Sophie looked up at him. "What did you find out?" "Enough." He crouched to her level, the same level he used when he needed her to hear him without anything getting in the way. "I need you to do one thing for me today. Don't change your routine. Walk your normal route, eat in the cafeteria, act like nothing has changed except the dog." She understood immediately. He could see it in her face, the quick calculation, the recognition that this was more than him showing up to scare Carter. "You're watching," she said. "I'm always watching," he said. "New development." She almost smiled. Almost. Then she picked up her backpack, squared her shoulders the way she had learned to square them, and walked into the school with Ranger pressed against her left leg. Marcus watched her go. Then he turned to the front office. It took Principal Ford 40 minutes to find a reason to call him in, which he interpreted as 39 minutes longer than he expected. She sat across from him with her hands folded and the professionally sympathetic expression already loaded and ready to deploy. "Commander Cole, I want to be transparent with you. The Weston family has been an extraordinary partner to this school. The athletic complex alone serves over 400 students annually. That relationship requires careful—" "Principal Ford," Marcus said, "I have 7 incident reports filed by one of your teachers. I have medical documentation of an injury my daughter sustained on school grounds, and I have 42 days of a pattern that your administration categorized as resolved without a single documented action." He placed Ms. Reyes's copies on her desk, one at a time, deliberately, without rushing. "I'm not here to be transparent with you. I'm here to tell you that this documentation is going to a detective in the Financial Crimes Unit by noon today. And after that, the conversation stops being between you and me." Ford's hands separated on the desk. "I don't think that's necessary." "I do." He stood, picked up his cover, and left her office. His phone buzzed before he reached the parking lot. "Nora." He answered immediately. "We have a problem," she said. "Weston's lawyer contacted the county school board this morning. They're filing an administrative complaint claiming Ranger is an unauthorized animal, creating a disruption risk. They want him removed by end of day." Marcus kept walking. "How fast can they move on that? With Weston's connections, he could have a board ruling by 3 o'clock. A pause. "Marcus, he knows you're pushing. This is the reaction I told you to watch for." "Then we use it. I need one more day to get the financial documentation in front of the federal prosecutor. 1 day. Can you keep the pressure on without escalating past the point of recovery?" Marcus thought about Sophie in that hallway, about Ranger beside her, about Carter Weston's broken stride this morning. "I can give you until noon tomorrow," he said. "After that, I'm going to need something to show my daughter." He was back at the school at 2:30, standing near the main entrance, when his phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "You should know who you're really dealing with. Meet me. Parking structure on 4th. 4 p.m. Come alone. I have information about your daughter's case you need to hear." Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. He forwarded it to Nora with a single line. "Got a contact. Evaluating." Then he watched the school entrance and waited. At 2:47, Sophie came out with Ranger, and she was walking differently than she had that morning. Head up, stride deliberate, chin level. Whatever had happened in those hours between drop-off and pickup had changed something in the set of her shoulders. "How was it?" Marcus asked. "Carter didn't come near me once." She said it like she was reporting a fact, not celebrating it. "He watched me in the cafeteria the whole lunch period, never moved." She reached down and touched Ranger's head. "I think he doesn't know what to do when there's a witness he can't manage." "That's exactly right," Marcus said. "Dad," she looked up at him. "He's not acting on his own. I know you already know that. But today in math class, I sat behind two of his friends, and they were texting someone. The same number. And whatever that person was sending back, they kept looking at me after each message." Marcus felt the case shift 1 degree in his chest. "Did you see the number?" "No, but one of them saved it in his phone with a contact name." She met his eyes. It said, Dad W. He called Nora from the parking lot, with Sophie sitting in the truck. "Dad W," Nora said immediately. "Grant Weston is directly coordinating the targeting through his son's friends. I suspected it, but I couldn't prove the communication chain." Her voice sharpened. "That's the piece I needed. If we can document even one message flowing from Weston's phone to those kids directing action against Sophie, the federal wire harassment statute applies, and the whole thing becomes a federal case, not a school board matter." "What about the anonymous contact?" Marcus asked. "Go," she said. "Carefully, but go. If someone inside Weston's operation is trying to get out, that testimony is worth more than anything we've built so far." Marcus left Sophie with Diane and drove to the parking structure on 4th. The contact was a woman in her late 30s, sitting in a gray sedan on the 2nd level, and she rolled down her window when Marcus pulled up beside her. She looked like someone who had not slept in several days. "You're Cole," she said. "Who are you?" "My name is Jennifer Marsh. I'm the CFO of Weston Properties." She looked at her hands on the steering wheel. "I have been for 6 years." Marcus waited. "I started keeping my own records 14 months ago, when Grant asked me to run payments through the foundation accounts that I knew were not foundation expenses." She reached into the back seat and placed a flash drive on the edge of her open window. School board members, 2 city council votes, a payment to a company that, when I traced it back far enough, turned out to be a crisis communications firm that specializes in discrediting families involved in legal disputes. She paused. 3 of the names on that drive are connected to the parents of children Carter targeted. Marcus looked at the flash drive. He did not touch it yet. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Jennifer Marsh looked at him for a moment. "Because last week, Grant told me to run a payment to the same crisis firm with your daughter's name in the reference field." Her voice didn't waver. "And I have a daughter, who is 9 years old." Marcus picked up the flash drive. "You need witness protection," he said. "You need to talk to Detective Nora Vance, tonight, not tomorrow." "I know." She had already started her engine. "I've been sitting in this car for 2 hours, trying to convince myself I was brave enough to do this." "You already are," he said. "Make the call." She drove away. Marcus sat in the parking structure for 30 seconds, the flash drive in his hand, the full weight of what had just landed pressing down on him with a particular clarity of a mission that had just gone from complex to critical. Grant Weston had put his daughter's name on a document. He had been patient. He had followed Nora's lead. He had worked within channels and waited and built the case the right way. He was still going to do all of that. But something had calcified in him in that parking structure, clean and cold and certain. The same thing that calcified before every mission, when the objective became undeniable. Grant Weston had made Sophie a target on a document. That was his first real mistake. And Marcus Cole had never once let a mistake like that go to waste. Nora listened to everything Marcus told her about Jennifer Marsh in under 4 minutes. And when he finished, she was quiet for exactly 3 seconds before she said, "Get her into protective custody tonight, not tomorrow. Tonight. I told her to call you directly." "She hasn't yet." A pause. "Marcus, if Weston finds out she met with you before she talks to us officially, she's exposed, and so is every piece of documentation on that drive. I need her in a safe location before his people figure out she's gone sideways." "I'll find her." He called Jennifer Marsh's number from the parking structure. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. He called again. Same result. He felt the first cold edge of something wrong move through him, and he was already starting the truck when she called back, her voice lower than it had been an hour ago. "Someone followed me from the parking structure," she said. "A black SUV. It's been 2 cars back since I left." "Where are you right now?" She gave him the intersection. Marcus pulled out, calculating. "Drive to the Central Police Precinct on Morrison. Don't go home. Don't stop anywhere. Drive directly there and walk inside and ask for Detective Nora Vance by name. Tell the desk officer it's a federal witness matter." "What if they—" "Jennifer." His voice was steady and direct. "You already made the hard decision. This is just the driving part. Go." He called Nora back. "She's being followed. I'm sending her to Morrison." "I'll be there in 8 minutes." Nora was already moving. He could hear it. "Marcus, the flash drive. You still have it?" "Yes." "Meet me there." He was 3 blocks from Morrison when his phone buzzed with a text from a number he recognized as one of Nora's secondary lines. 2 words. "Weston's moving." He arrived at Morrison to find Jennifer Marsh already inside, sitting in a chair near the desk sergeant, with her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. She looked up when Marcus came through the door, and something in her face relaxed, the way people relax when they realize they actually made it somewhere safe. Nora came in 90 seconds behind him. And after that, things moved with a particular focused velocity of a case that had just found its foundation. They sat in a conference room for 2 hours. Jennifer walked Nora through 14 months of records, payment routing, shell company structures, and the specific language Grant Weston used when he wanted things done without leaving his own fingerprints on them. She was precise and organized, and clearly had been rehearsing this in her head for a long time before she'd had the courage to say it out loud. At 7:14 p.m., Nora put her pen down and looked at the flash drive contents on her laptop and said quietly, "This is a federal case. This has been a federal case for at least 2 years, and nobody connected the right pieces." She looked at Marcus. "I'm calling the U.S. Attorney's Office tonight." "How long before they can move?" "On this evidence? 48 hours for warrants, maybe less." She closed the laptop. "But Marcus, Weston is going to feel the pressure before the arrest. He's already reacting. The school board complaint, the SUV following Jennifer. He knows something shifted today." "Which means he's going to move against Sophie before you can move against him." Nora didn't disagree. That was the part Marcus had been turning over since the parking structure. The window between now and the warrants. The hours when Weston would be feeling cornered, but still free. And cornered men with money and no conscience were the most dangerous version of the threat. "I need something in place at that school tomorrow morning," Marcus said. "Not just Ranger. Something with teeth. I can have 2 plainclothes officers on campus by 8 o'clock as substitute teachers." Nora looked at him steadily. "And Marcus, you need to tell Sophie." He drove home with that sitting in his chest the whole way. Sophie was still awake when he got in. She was at the kitchen table with her homework technically in front of her, and Ranger's head technically in her lap. But she wasn't doing homework, and Ranger wasn't sleeping. They were both just waiting. He sat down across from her, and he told her. Not everything. Not the financial architecture, or the witness protection logistics, or the federal wire statutes. But the real shape of it. That Carter was being directed by his father. That her father had been specifically named on a document. That it was bigger than one cruel boy in one school. And it had been happening to other families, and it was going to stop. Sophie listened without interrupting, which was something she had gotten very good at over 11 weeks of learning that making noise didn't change anything. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. How many other kids? She asked. 5, that we know of. She processed that. He watched her do it, watched her take the information and integrate it in the particular way she had always integrated hard things. Not by falling apart, but by expanding to fit the new weight. Were any of them okay? She asked. 3 of them changed schools. 1 family moved. But they're all still here, Sophie. They're all still standing. She nodded slowly. Then she said, Dad, I need to tell you something I didn't tell you this afternoon. He waited. After school, in the parking lot, while I was waiting for Diane, Carter walked past me. Close. Closer than he needed to. And he leaned in and he said, she paused, just briefly. He said, enjoy the dog while you have him. My dad's making 1 call tomorrow, and that dog and your soldier daddy are both going to be gone. Marcus kept his face neutral. It took effort. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Because I knew what your face would do, she said. And I didn't want you making a decision based on your face instead of your brain. He looked at his daughter, 10 years old, leg brace propped against the chair, his old sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, eyes that had seen too much of the wrong thing for too long. That is, he said carefully, one of the most tactically sound things anyone has ever said to me. She almost smiled. Ms. Reyes says I'm good at reading situations. Ms. Reyes is right. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand once. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a different kind of day. He was not wrong. Marcus arrived at Millbrook at 7:45 with Ranger and with a particular quality of stillness that came from a night of no sleep and absolute clarity about what the next several hours required. Nora's 2 plainclothes officers were already in place. One signed in as a substitute for the 7th grade science block. One positioned in the main office as an administrative temp. Both had been briefed. Both were armed. Ms. Reyes met Marcus at the entrance. She had seen the officers come in, and she looked at Marcus with an expression that was somewhere between relief and controlled terror. He's here, she said. Weston, Grant Weston. He came in 20 minutes ago with a lawyer. They're in Ford's office right now. Marcus checked his watch. Warrants were 48 hours out minimum, which meant Weston was here to preempt, to use money and lawyers and institutional access to dismantle the pressure before it could become official. The school board complaint, Ranger's removal, probably Marcus's access too, if he could swing it through Ford. Go to your classroom, Marcus said to Ms. Reyes. Keep Sophie with you until I come get her. Don't let her into the hallway alone. He walked to the main office. Grant Weston was standing in the hallway outside Ford's office when Marcus came around the corner, and they saw each other at the same moment for the first time. Weston was exactly what Marcus expected. Silver-haired, expensive suit, the easy physical confidence of a man who had never once stood somewhere and felt like he didn't belong. His lawyer was beside him with a leather portfolio and the practiced expression of someone who got paid to make problems quiet. Weston looked at Marcus. Then he looked at Ranger. Something passed across his face very quickly, too fast for most people to catch. Marcus caught it. Fear. Managed, but real. Commander Cole, Weston said, his voice warm and controlled. I've been hoping we could talk, man to man, without all the official noise. I think there are some misunderstandings that can be cleared up easily if we just— Mr. Weston, Marcus said, your son put his hands on my daughter. You put her name on a document filed with a crisis communications firm. And you have spent 11 weeks using a child to systematically destroy my child. He stopped 4 feet away. Ranger sat beside him, steady and immovable. There is no version of this conversation that ends with a misunderstanding being cleared up. Weston's lawyer stepped forward. Commander Cole, I'd advise you to be very careful about making— Your client can have his lawyer present for every conversation from here forward, Marcus said, not looking at the lawyer. He kept his eyes on Weston. Because every conversation from here forward is going to be on record. Weston's composure slipped 1 degree. Just 1. But it was enough. You don't understand what you're walking into, he said, and the warmth had left his voice now, replaced with something flatter and more honest. I have relationships in this county that you cannot. I know exactly what relationships you have, Marcus said. So does the Financial Crimes Unit. So does the U.S. Attorney's Office. He watched Weston's face. Jennifer Marsh had a very productive evening. The name landed like a physical thing. Weston went very still. His lawyer's hand tightened on the leather portfolio. In the silence that followed, Principal Ford appeared in her office doorway and looked between the 2 men with the expression of someone watching a structure they built on bad ground finally start to move. Richard, Weston said to his lawyer, quietly, the warmth completely gone. We need to make some calls. He walked out of the school without looking at Marcus again. His lawyer followed. The door swung shut behind them. Ford stood in her doorway. She looked at Marcus, then at the closed door, then back at Marcus, and she said nothing for a long moment. Principal Ford, Marcus said, I'd like Sophie brought to the main office now. And I'd like you to have a very honest conversation with the U.S. Attorney's Office when they call you this afternoon. He paused. That call is coming, whether you're ready for it or not. The question is what you say when it arrives. Ford picked up her phone. Marcus walked to the window and watched Grant Weston standing in the parking lot with his phone pressed to his ear. His posture, no longer the posture of a man who owned every room he walked into. For the first time in 4 years, Grant Weston was standing somewhere he could not buy his way out of. His phone buzzed. Nora. The U.S. attorney moved faster than I expected, she said. Warrants are being drafted right now. Marcus, it's happening. But I need you to keep Sophie close and keep Ranger on her for the next 6 hours. Until Weston is in custody, he is unpredictable. Understood. How'd the morning go? Marcus watched Weston through the window, the man pacing now, his lawyer talking fast beside him, both of them understanding for the first time what it felt like when the ground you thought was solid turned out to be borrowed. He made a mistake, Marcus said. He came to the school. Good, Nora said. Let him keep making them. Marcus put his phone away. Behind him, he heard the click of Ranger's nails on the hallway floor and turned to see Sophie coming around the corner with Ms. Reyes, her backpack over one shoulder, her eyes finding her father immediately. She read his face the way she always read his face. It's almost over, isn't it? She said, not a question. Almost, he said. She nodded. She reached down and touched Ranger's ear, and Ranger leaned into her hand, and the three of them stood there in that hallway together, while outside in the parking lot, the first real cracks ran through everything Grant Weston had built. The warrants came through at 2:17 in the afternoon. Nora sent Marcus a single text. It's done. Moving now. He read it, standing in the hallway outside Ms. Reyes's classroom, Ranger sitting beside him, and he let out a breath that had been building in his chest for 4 days. He knocked twice and opened the classroom door. Sophie looked up from her desk immediately, the way she had been looking up every time the door opened all morning, her whole body tuned to whatever was happening just outside her line of sight. Marcus met her eyes and gave her one small nod. She understood. She had always been fast that way. Ms. Reyes looked between them. "Is it?" "Yes," Marcus said. Ms. Reyes sat down at her desk like her legs had made a unilateral decision and pressed both hands flat on the surface and stared at them for a moment. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." Sophie was already packing her bag. Grant Weston was arrested at 2:34 p.m. at his downtown office building, 3 blocks from City Hall, by 4 federal agents and Nora Vance, who had been waiting for this moment for 9 months, and who delivered the charges in a level voice that gave nothing away. Weston said nothing when the cuffs went on. His lawyer said enough for both of them, and none of it mattered. His assistant called Carter's school at 2:41. By the time that call connected, Carter Weston was already being walked to the main office by his homeroom teacher, and the expression on his face when he understood what had happened was the first genuinely unguarded thing Marcus had ever seen from that boy. Not cruelty, not performance. Just an 11-year-old whose entire architecture of protection had just collapsed in an afternoon. Marcus heard about that later, from Nora. He was not there for it. He was in Diane's kitchen with Sophie and Ranger, and a pot of coffee that nobody was monitoring closely enough. And the 4 of them, Marcus, Sophie, Diane, and Ranger, who counted in every way that mattered, sat there while the news moved through the city. Sophie's phone buzzed at 3:02. A classmate, asking if she'd seen the news about Carter's father. She showed the screen to Marcus without commenting. He looked at it and set the phone back down on the table. "How do you feel?" he asked. She thought about it honestly, which was something he had always loved about her. The refusal to give the easy answer when the real one was available. "I don't feel like I thought I would," she said. "I thought I'd feel like it was over." "But it doesn't feel like that." "It feels like something finally became real that I already knew was true." She turned her coffee mug in her hands. "Does that make sense?" "More than you know," he said. Diane was the one who cried. She had been holding it together since Marcus came home, running on the particular adrenaline of someone managing a crisis in someone else's family because someone had to. And now that it was over, she sat at her kitchen table and put her face in her hands and cried with the full-body relief of a person releasing something they had been carrying too long. Sophie got up and put her arms around Diane without being asked. Ranger pressed his nose against Diane's knee. Marcus watched his daughter comfort someone else in the middle of her own crisis and thought, not for the first time, that she was better than him in every way that counted. His phone rang. "Nora." "He's in processing," she said. "His lawyer is already filing motions, but I need you to understand what we have, Marcus. Jennifer Marsh's documentation alone covers 6 counts of federal wire fraud. Add the financial coercion of school board members, the payment to the crisis firm with Sophie's name in the reference field, and the communication chain directing Carter's targeting campaign through his son's friends." She paused. "This man is not getting out. Not on bail, not on appeal, not on anything his lawyers can construct in the time they have left." "The other families," Marcus said. "I'm calling all 5 of them tonight. They deserve to hear it directly." A brief pause. "Marcus, you gave me the witness I needed." "Jennifer Marsh never walks into that parking structure if you don't push hard enough to force Weston's reaction. You did that." "Sophie did that," he said. "She stood up for 42 days without backup. I just showed up." Nora was quiet for a moment. "Tell her that." He hung up. He looked at his daughter, still sitting with her arm around Diane, Ranger's head now in Sophie's lap. the three of them taking up the exact amount of space that felt like home. "Sophie," he said, "Nora says you're the reason this case has a foundation. 42 days of not breaking gave Jennifer Marsh enough time to get scared enough to talk." He kept his voice even. "You held the line when no one was holding it with you." Sophie looked at him. "I didn't feel like I was holding anything. I felt like I was just trying to get through lunch without crying in a bathroom." "That's what holding the line feels like," he said, "from the inside." She absorbed that. Then she looked down at Ranger. "He knew something was wrong. From the first morning you brought him in. He kept putting himself between me and Carter's hallway, even when there was nothing happening." She scratched behind his ears. "Like he was making a point." "He was," Marcus said. "That's what he does." The following morning, Marcus took Sophie to school himself. Not in uniform this time. Jeans, jacket, the civilian version of himself that existed outside of deployments and duty stations. The one Sophie knew better than any other version. Ranger walked on Sophie's left, as he had every day since Monday, his presence now simply part of the texture of her school day. The hallways were different. Not loud, not celebratory, just different in the specific way that spaces change when the thing everyone has been pretending not to see is finally visible. Students looked at Sophie as she walked in, but the look had shifted. The particular invisibility that bullying creates, the way targets become scenery, had cracked open. People saw her now, actually saw her. Carter Weston was not there. He would not be there for some time. His mother had pulled him from Millbrook the previous afternoon, and Marcus understood that decision without judging it. Carter was 11. He was not his father, even if his father had spent years trying to make him into a smaller version of his worst instincts. What Carter became from here was a question that belonged to whatever was left of his family to answer. Ms. Reyes was waiting near Sophie's locker. She handed Sophie a small envelope. "From the 2 students who witnessed the cafeteria incident," she said. "They wanted to write to you themselves. I told them that was the right thing to do." Sophie took the envelope and held it for a moment without opening it. "Ms. Reyes," she said, "you filed 7 reports when you knew nobody was reading them. Why?" Ms. Reyes looked at her steadily. "Because I needed there to be a record somewhere, so that when the right person came looking, something would be there to find." She paused. "I'm sorry it took this long for that person to arrive." "My dad came home early," Sophie said. "He wasn't supposed to be here for another month." "I know." Ms. Reyes looked at Marcus over Sophie's head. "Some things work out at exactly the right moment." Marcus drove home alone after drop-off, Ranger in the back seat, the particular quiet of a mission concluded settling over him. He sat in Diane's driveway for a while without going inside, just letting the quiet be what it was. His phone buzzed, a number he didn't know. He answered. "Commander Cole?" A boy's voice, uncertain and trying not to show it. "This is Carter Weston." Marcus said nothing. He waited. "I know you don't have any reason to take this call," Carter said. "My mom said you probably wouldn't, but she said I should try anyway." A pause, the kind that comes from a person choosing their next words with genuine care for the first time. "I want to say I'm sorry. To Sophie. I know I have to say it to her directly, but I wanted to say it to you first because—" Another pause. "Because you're her dad, and I think that's the right order." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Ranger shifted in the back seat. "I'm going to tell Sophie you called," Marcus said finally. "What she does with that is her decision, not mine." "I know." "Carter." Marcus's voice was not warm, but it was not closed either. 11 years old is not too late to become a different person than you've been. But it requires more than a phone call. My mom said the same thing. a beat. She cries a lot now, about what I did. I didn't know she would do that. Now you know, Marcus said. He hung up. He sat in the driveway another minute. Then he went inside. 3 weeks later, Nora called with the outcome of the preliminary hearing. Grant Weston had been denied bail on the federal coercion charges. His passport had been surrendered. His attorneys had filed 4 motions in 5 days, and all 4 had been denied. The U.S. Attorney's Office was projecting a trial date within the year and was not anticipating difficulty with conviction. The 5 other families had all given recorded statements. 2 of them were being represented by the same federal attorney. One of the fathers, a former Army Ranger who had moved his family to another state after his daughter was targeted, called Marcus directly after Nora gave him his number. "I want you to know," the man said, "that my daughter slept through the night for the first time in 2 years when she heard the news. 2 years, man." His voice broke just slightly. "She's 8 years old." Marcus didn't have words for that. He just said, "I know." And he did. The drawings went back up on Sophie's bedroom wall 2 weeks after the arrest. Not all at once. First the fighter jets, then the ocean, then, last, the pencil portrait of Ranger that she'd been working on before she'd taken everything down. Marcus was passing her room when she pinned the last one up, and he stopped in the doorway and watched without saying anything. Sophie stepped back to look at the wall, her head tilted, assessing her own work. Ranger sat beside her, looking at the drawing of himself with the particular dignified confusion of a dog regarding his own image. "It's a good likeness," Marcus said. Sophie snorted. "His ears are uneven." "His ears are always uneven." She laughed, really laughed, the full version, the one he had not heard in a long time, and the sound of it filled the hallway and went into the walls of that house and stayed there. He leaned against the doorframe and let it. Some missions were measured in objectives achieved, targets neutralized, operations concluded with clean outcomes and documented results. Marcus had built his career on those measures and believed in them. But the real mission, the one that had started the moment Sophie Cole was born and would not end until he did, was measured in something entirely different. In a 10-year-old girl's laugh in a hallway. In drawings going back up on a wall. In a German shepherd looking at his own portrait with confused dignity, while the child he had decided to protect stood beside him, completely unafraid. Marcus Cole had gone to war in 4 countries and come home from all of them. He had made hard decisions in impossible places and carried the weight of them without complaint. But standing in that doorway, listening to his daughter laugh, he understood with the absolute certainty of a man who had finally stopped moving long enough to see clearly that this was the only mission that had ever truly mattered. And he had not failed it. He had come home exactly when he needed to, and he was never leaving her unguarded again.